Hiya and welcome to Sina Bounce Live. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today because I know that many of you watching will find social media overwhelming, hard. You don't know what to put out, when to put it out, and how to do it. So we've got a fabulous expert with us today. So I'm going to introduce to you Ruth Southern from Swallowtail Social. Hello, Ruth. How are you? Welcome.
Hi. Lovely
Oh,
to see you, Charlotte. It's nice
Oh,
to be
it's lovely
here.
to see you. I always feel calm when I see you because I know that you're going
Oh,
to give us some golden nuggets of what we can do and you're going to look after us. So, for those
got
of
you.
you that haven't met you before, Ruth, please tell us a little bit about what Swallowtail Social offer.
Will do, Charlotte. Thank you very much. Like I say, it's great to be here. It's great to hopefully share some little tips for you today. Swallowtail Social, my business, is all about helping small business owners to understand how they can use social media better, more effectively. In fact, I actually would like you to use it less. Not to feel as though you've got to be there all the time and at all the places. I want it to be manageable for you. And nobody knows your business better than you. So rather than me run your social media for you, I help out with the training, the coaching and the support that can help you just take the social media and fly with it. That's where the Swallowtail Social butterfly name comes in. Swallowtails get flying. So
I love
it's
that.
training workshops, most of which I do online, group workshops, so you can get a fast fix into a particular topic. Also, I do one-to-one short courses, so over the space of a few weeks, and it's super tailored for you, what you need, what your current level of experience is, where you compared with where you want to be, what your aims are. So those one-to-one courses really dig as deep as you need and at the pace that you want. And then my other thing is that is really popular right now is power hour sessions. So we dig down to literally a power hour fast fix of brainstorming or troubleshooting. And it's that opportunity for people often say to me things like, oh, I've just got my knickers in a knot about whatever it is, or a specific thing, or I just don't feel as though I know where I'm going with X. So we can just get an hour, get blitzed, and you can pick my brains, or we can, map things out.
So
Those are the things I
one
do.
thing is so much that you can offer, and I know it's a huge range of services. But one of the things that I always hear from people that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed about social media is that they still want it to feel like them, and that's really what you help them with, isn't it? You help them to be that bespokeness about what they want to put out and how to do it. And you saying that we can do it less, that's just music to our ears, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about. So if you're a beginner, obviously you know the message. Like you said, we all know our business best, really, because it's our baby, isn't it? So you
Exactly.
want that to come across on social media. So how do you kind of deal with that when somebody come in the beginning stages and they say, I just don't know how to do Instagram. It's a minefield. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's it. Nobody is born a marketing expert and nobody is born a social media expert. So to suddenly have to combine those things and tackle that showing up in, in what's a very visible way, putting yourself out there, it's pretty scary. I know that. And what I also know, though, is that it's totally in your control. It's totally in your control how much you put out there, whether you show up on video or not. You don't have to if you don't want. What is right for you, and that's what I feel so passionately about, is how you can come across authentically and not feel as though it's forced and you've got to be doing the thing that you don't want to be doing. I feel really strongly about helping you to understand how you can do what's right for you that will leverage the business, will grow, will get you new sales and inquiries, but in a way that is manageable for you. I'm not going to say you should be on social media every day. You should be making platform X your go-to home. What's right for you? I don't want to say you've got to be showing up on Instagram Reels and dancing and pointing at words. If that's not you, let's not do it. Because that will
But
come
that's
across
what
as
that's
being
what people
fake.
think, isn't it? A
Yeah,
lot of people
yeah.
think that that. So TikTok, for example, is a very much
Oh,
a platform that people think they're going to do silly dancing and things like that.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, educational videos on TikTok do really, really well. So
Mm,
what I want to share a little bit, and I'm hoping you got a few little golden nuggets, is about leads, because social media at the end of the day is to get more connections, get
mm,
more business. And sometimes I think a lot of people kind of start with social media and it's just another thing that we have to do. And it shouldn't be about that, should it? So tell us a
mm.
little bit about how it actually can really, really enhance, the connections that you make, and then hopefully get some leads from
Absolutely. Social media is such a really useful tool to use to be a lead generator at the end of the day. You have the opportunity to reach squillions more people than maybe if you weren't using it, let's be honest. And then whether you're maybe an online business and you could attract leads and customers from anywhere, or perhaps you're a business that operates in a location and it's important that people to attract the people who are local to you, not the whoever it is in Texas or Timbuktu. And that is the power of social media, actually, when you're using it strategically and you can be intentional about the way you put yourself out there. Yes, how often you do that or how often you don't do that, what's within your boundaries, but also in an effective way that it is going to get those leads. I see a lot of people feeling as though they've got to show up or they should be. I put this "should" in quotes because there's an unnecessary pressure around that, I think. We start beating ourselves up that we're maybe not doing it often enough or not doing it the right way, not getting results, and it starts becoming a burden. But I'd like to support people in the fact that when you show up and you have a little bit of intention and that little bit of knowledge about what is most likely to work for you, or maybe you're coming from at least from an informed place about, well, maybe this isn't the perfect thing that I could be doing, but it's getting me progress. So that's going to help you. Social media, I'm sure you found this as well, Charlotte. It's about just attracting people into your orbit, getting them into what we in the marketing jargon language, we call it into a funnel, filling the top of the funnel with as many people that make them aware of us and our brand and what we do, why we're so great at it. Getting those people in the top of the funnel, then you can nurture it, nurture and nurture to bring them down the funnel. They get to know you better, they get to like what you're doing, and then one day they'll be ready to say, hey, here's my credit card. So actually, that's the process I really favor with social media, and using it in a little bit of a strategic way and not feeling pressured by it. And I know one of the things you mentioned at the top, Charlotte, was we all get into that trap of feeling overwhelmed by social media and overthinking it and procrastinating. Should I have done it differently? Should I be doing? Oh, I'll show up today, but I don't know what to post, and it starts getting just too much. So
that.
I
And I
hope
think
that
I think you're
actually
absolutely
by
right.
just being a little bit intentional and thinking, what is actually something that's going to help my business today? I'm not going to worry about whether it's the perfect thing to do, but just to put something out there. It's build on that then. Build on that.
But that's really what you say. You're saying planning a little bit more strategic, and those are really golden nuggets. And I also think
Yeah.
what you were saying is that's where you can really come in with the power hours. So you can give people
Mm.
that kind of content and just give them ideas, because people really struggle with that. Now I'm the opposite. I'm going to say I am just like a bubble with ideas. I just need more time, but I love it. But
Yeah.
you know what? I also get overwhelmed sometimes. But it's about, I
Yeah.
think when I get overwhelmed, it's because it's the time element. So
Right.
it's all different. We're all different in different ways, and it's that planning that needs to come into it. So you're actually
Mhm.
remembering why you're doing it. Like you were saying, we have to
That's the
show up.
intention part of it, is
Yeah,
what's the purpose? What do I want to get out of just this post, this simple post that I'm going to put out on social media? What do I want to achieve by that? And I'm
yeah,
not saying let's all get overanalyze it and overthink it, because again, we're wanting to bust the overwhelm. And but you're
yeah.
right, Charlotte. Different people have different, some people really struggle with the ideas. Some people get stuck into the rut of thinking they can only post certain kinds of things and not other things, and everything else we start getting a bit snow blinded by. other opportunities, for example. But I think it's I mean, I'm a really creative person myself, and I can come up with loads and loads of ideas, and sometimes the overwhelm will hit me in terms of how to narrow that down and how to get some focus and how to actually take all of these ideas and just get one of them, just one, and let's
And that's
start
the
again.
trick, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
and I do think we forget, and this sounds maybe a little bit stupid, but we do sometimes forget that social media is a social platform where you literally just speak to people. And when
just
I
chat to
go
them,
back to if I feel overwhelmed, then I go back to the basics and just start chatting to people.
just chat.
People that have
Yeah.
commented, people that, and that is when they, and like you said, you've got to be yourself. And I
Mm,
want to share a little story because you said about the power of like where you share your things, how to attract people in different areas. So
mm,
I live very close to a place called Pontypool. I
mhm.
happened to share a video in a Pontypool group, thinking it was the Pontypool near where we live. It ended up being
Okay.
Pontypool in Canada. And when they saw this beautiful photograph of a vineyard, they said, "Where is it?" And I said, "Oh, it's between Abergavenny and Monmouth." And they're going, "Where?" And anyway, short story, cut a long story short, it ended up to be Pontypool in Canada. And one of the ladies commented on a post, and she said she was going on a tour in the UK visiting South Wales, and therefore she's now coming to the vineyard this summer. I mean, that's
Oh,
just the power, isn't it? And this is what
I love
you
it.
can really kind of target. So there are groups and things. I want you just a little bit of a nugget of how can you target people in local areas, different areas, regarding of where your business is and who you want to attract.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlotte. I mean, that is a classic example of actually
I love that.
conversation, chatting, and something comes out of essentially nothing. Even it's that's fantastic. And you're absolutely right about that local thing because there are some, it's part of the kind of little tricks and know-how that is around social media to use it in a way that is strategic for you. So when you come into this local thing, two tips I would give you that can, and these can apply across different platforms as well. So first thing is hashtags. Now, hashtags are a bit of a dark art and they're a little bit bamboozling for a lot of people. Why would you use them? Why am I using the right ones or the wrong ones? Or let's not overthink it. Hashtags are, what are they? Signposts. They are pointing the way to your post. But they're not talking to your audience. They're not talking to the people who are following you already. They're talking to the platform algorithm. Now that's a bit of a technical word. It's talking to the robots, essentially. The Facebook robot, Instagram, Twitter robot, Pinterest even. And I know that's not really a social media platform, but it is another platform. Hashtags. They are pointing out to the robots, who should we show this post to? So the people who are interested in vineyards in near Abergavenny, then yeah, hashtag the location life out of that. So put all those, if it's a specific location that is important to you regionally to attract customers in that area, that radius, let's get those regional hashtags in place. So, you know, Bristol Salon, Cardiff digital marketing, whatever your business is, hashtag a town out of it, because I mean, digital marketing, that could go anywhere, but not necessarily Cardiff. Not a great example, perhaps. The salons, the people who have got bricks and mortar presence, people who are tradespeople especially find regional hashtags really useful. So that's my first tip.
Top tip.
Hashtags that are location centric. Now, my other tip is generally is actually a bit more Facebook specific, and that is Facebook groups. You mentioned it yourself, Charlotte. The sharing content in a group that was very for people in a certain region. Facebook loves us to use groups because it's all about community and it's all about shared experiences and things we've got in common with other people. So if you're a business owner who wants to reach people in in a certain region, in a town, in an area, then bingo, let's find some groups that cover those regions. Get your content in there. And maybe you're not necessarily showing up as your business, because some groups have different kind of rules. But it's generally a great a great tool that you can use. A great strategy is to use Facebook. Again, it's about being strategic. Where are you showing up on Facebook? Are you just putting it out on your page, which could be seen by anyone? Now you can, like I say, target that content a little bit more with the regional hashtags. But of course, we can also be strategic by getting in the right kind of groups and putting ourselves out there, making people aware of us, getting more people into the funnel who are the right people. They are. A couple of tips for you.
That is a top tip, and we just had hashtag love this advice from Ben
Bingo.
Kelly. So
I
I'm
love
so
it.
grateful you watched it,
Thanks,
because
Ben.
it is great advice, and I think it's just making it simple. And groups are super effective. It's I know it's a very good lead generation if you post it in groups that are relevant. And yes, it's a little bit of a minefield of what they allow and what they don't allow. But you know what? If you don't
You
test it, you're
soon
not going
get
to know.
familiar with what which ones
Yeah.
allow which. And here's another tip for you, darling. Something when I'm posting in groups, because I love being in all sorts of groups for different reasons and for different purposes, we'll do. And by the way, that means your customer does as well. So getting in those groups, and I keep some sticky notes on my desktop. So that, and I've actually got a notes thing on my app as well on my phone, so that if I need a little quick reminder, oh, which are the groups that only let me post once a week about my business or whatever it is, I can just quickly reference that, check my sticky notes where I've made some notes, and think, I'm being strategic.
Yeah.
There you go.
You are full of top tips today. So to finish
It's
off,
about the tips so you use social media less.
yeah, but I want to come back to, because if you are watching this and you think, you know what, I'm just not really sure, what platform should I use? How often do I need to use it?
Mhm.
What content? The content is minefield. I don't know what to put out. Then the Power Hour is a great tool. So just before we finish off today, can you just sort of say, because it is quite good, if I always find when I've had Power Hours with any kind of element, workshops and things, that if you have a little bit of an idea of what you want out of the workshop before you go, that can be quite useful, can't it? So what should people kind of think about before they book one? And I know they don't have to, but sometimes it's quite useful.
Yeah, I think that it can be really useful if there's a particular area or a particular topic that you feel as though that's just causing me the niggles, and I feel as though I kind of want to make progress, or it's how I'm hitting up against a hurdle. Like I said, I think I mentioned earlier on, someone I've been working with recently, she had a power hour with me, and she said, "Oh, I'm just getting my knickers in a knot about setting up a Facebook group." That kind of thing is perfect for a power hour. We can brainstorm, troubleshoot, get it set up properly for her. I got that. We got it set up so that it was search friendly. She could get her group found. She knew what kind of post to put in the group as opposed to on her page. And it was untangling or demystifying all the stuff around that topic. So yes, if you've got a topic that you feel as though I'm not sure about, because the world of social media is really big, let's be honest. So it could be all sorts of things, whatever. Is it a specific platform you wanting to look at? Is it a specific area of that platform? Instagram has got lots of different things going on with it, whether that's, posts or videos, reels, stories. They all of these things can be overwhelming. So we can break it down. If you've got an idea of what do you want to achieve, what's holding you back right now, we can blitz it. I tell you what,
Fantastic.
I'll
By
give
the way,
you
I have one
another
more
example.
question.
Oh, go
This
on,
has
go.
come from Ben. So thank you so much. What is your advice about timing for posting? That's a great question, by the way.
Great question. I love this. And honestly, it's one of the most common questions I get, because hello, we're all overthinking that. Should I be posting at a different time? Should I be doing it more or less? Or honestly, there's no magic answer to this one. There's no, like, how long is a piece of string, I could say. What is right for you? Is it right for you and your customers to show? Is it okay for you? Does it feel okay within yourself to be showing up every day? If that's okay for you, then yes, show up every day. If not, if you feel as though that's too much, you can maybe only show up a couple of times a week. And I say show up, I don't necessarily mean show up. Only create a post a couple of times a week, then go for it. As for the specific timing, like what time of day, this is this is a massive case of loads of people just overthinking it and thinking it's going to make a massive difference. It's just really not. It's really not. If you could show up consistently, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's not the same thing as frequency, but consistently with the quality that your people want to hear from you, it is not going to matter about the timing. Just keeping consistent with it. Keep putting out there and being a little bit varied. Maybe yes, it's a video, maybe it's a photo, maybe it's going to be a carousel with multiple photos. Showing up in different ways, but consistently, is more important than worrying about the timing. I hope that
There's
helps.
so many myths out there, isn't it? You
It's a
hear
myth.
all
It's a
sorts.
myth.
If you do this within an hour, if you do it early in the morning, I
Don't
think
don't
the
sweat it.
one thing though, isn't it? Find out when your customers are commenting and things, because
Yeah,
that's often, isn't it, when they know. So if you, for example, I don't know, say hospitality, they're not going to be on social media during lunchtime or evening service.
yeah,
They're going to be there in the morning or really late at night, probably
yeah,
1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's the industry, isn't it? So you've got to kind of, I think
yeah,
sometimes, and I know you're very good at that, Ruth. Sometimes it's finding out like which ones are your customers and when are they likely to be
yeah.
on social media. Like you
Yes,
said,
and that
it's
ties
so many
really
myths.
in. It really ties in as well, Charlotte, with the idea of which platform should you be on. Well, focus on where your customers are going to be. If you're a
Yeah.
business serving other businesses, then yeah, LinkedIn is going to be hot property for you. If you're serving direct customers, then Facebook and Instagram, maybe whatever, it's about finding the right kind of place, and then from there working out and doing a bit of experimentation with what's the right kind of time of day for you to post. And sometimes I still I still go by this thing of, if it's right for you to post, just post. Don't don't overthink what time of day it is and should I be waiting till 8 o'clock. Because think about this as well. When you're on your phone, you're generally seeing posts from up to 2 days ago. And it's
Yeah.
even more on LinkedIn. They will have a lifespan, those posts. So whether you post at 9 in the morning or 12 lunchtime or whatever, if your customer really wants to hear from you and they're interested in your content, it will show up in their feed, whatever time of day.
That is a really top tip to finish off
So
on. It's
that's
the
where the
biggest talk
consistent
all day,
quality
really.
comes in. The quality matters much more than the timing.
Oh, absolutely. I have taken so much away from what you've just mentioned. So I want to say massive, massive thank you, Ruth, for joining me. And thank you, everyone who's watching. If you're watching on replay, and do put in hashtag replay and your question, because I know that Ruth will be more than happy for me to contact her and ask any questions. Or if you want to find out about power hours, now is the time. I'm going to stick some details of where you can find Ruth in the chat. But Ruth, where would you say they can find you?
You can find me on my favorite platforms, Instagram and Facebook, but you can of course find me on the See No Bounds platform. You know I'm there, and my power hours are available through that. You can get in touch and we can talk about what you might need, how I might be able to help you map out some content, brainstorm some ideas. You can find me on the See No Bounds as well.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, and hope you have a lovely afternoon. And we shall see you back here in the Black Lion studio from Cena Bounce Live very soon again. Take care,
Thanks.
everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Hiya. Welcome to Live
Hello,
at Five.
hello. We are running ever so slightly late, and this is because there's 3 things you should never do in life: work with animals, work with children, and work with technology. However, we overcome our little teething problem, and we have a fantastic show lined up for you. And we're talking about wills. Now, I know it's not, a subject that you should be having over a dinner party. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know why everyone isn't talking about it. It should be take away the taboo and bring out that topic of conversation, because there are some seriously interesting facts. And before we bring our guest out, I want to share some of those with you. So, interesting fact number one. Did you know that over 60% of adults in the UK don't have a will?
I didn't until today, but it's actually still on the to-do list. So we got an amazing guest with us today.
I've got another interesting fact.
Oh gosh, you've got another one.
Did you know that over 50% of self-employed people believe that they cannot actually have a will because they're running a self-employed business?
Wow.
And I didn't know this literally until 8 o'clock this morning when someone shared it with me. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. But over 50% of self-employed people believe that they are, because they're self-employed, they wouldn't be able to have a will because they haven't got any direct assets. It's really strange. Yeah, I know. It's really strange. Okay. But look, we've got an expert in here to kind of myth bust some of the things around wills. Things like, oh, it takes time. I haven't got the money. I don't really have anything. Oh, I'm married. So everything automatically goes to my partner. No, it doesn't. Oh, I have kids. So everything goes to the kids. No, it doesn't. Did you know that if you have a child, it won't necessarily, if something happens to both of you, the child won't necessarily go to your next family member, so mum, dad, auntie, uncle, brother, sister. That child will go into care, and then the family member then has to prove to social services that they are worthy people to look after your children. I mean, these are massive things, and so we've brought someone in today to go through all this with us and to make it a little bit easier for us to understand. So it is of no surprise that we've got one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He's kind, he's gentle, he's done our will for us, and he'll take you through the process. So let's bring out the lovely Derry Ap Howell from Maplebrook Wills. Derry, welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you. You sound like a font of knowledge yourself there, Jamie.
Well, do you know what, right? It's really funny because, I mean, we've known each other for a long time, right? And, well, probably not that long, but it feels like we've known each other for a long time. And I've learned a lot from you, but that's because I listen. And it's another skill that not many people know how to achieve. But I also worked in the funeral industry for 5 years. So I was on the other side, the bit where people hadn't got their wills set in place. And now all of a sudden, probate has kicked in. And to the point where actually the state has frozen their funds to where even the funeral can't be paid for. It's really, really interesting. It's really interesting. So look, one of the myths that I want to bust, right, is cost. So many people don't do it because of cost. So talk to us a little bit about this, because I think let's start right there. It doesn't cost a lot to get a will done, right?
No, it doesn't, and I'm happy to share, sort of what my costings are, So for for a single will for one person, it's £149 plus VAT. So you're talking about £180 to have a legal document that makes sure the assets you've worked hard for in your life go to the people that you care about most. So, okay, perception is everything. For some people, that might sound like a huge amount of money, and I understand that, certainly at the moment. But also, to maybe get a very poor legal document in place, I don't think that is exorbitant. So a lot of people, when I mention that price, they think, I thought it was going to be a lot more than that. So, there we are.
Well, I think I did as well when we first sort of were thinking, because again, the will for us had been on the to-do list for a long time, like for so many other people. And I think it's one of those things that, oh yeah, I should. Oh yeah, I really should. But I'm going to put it off because it's not urgent. Yeah. But like you mentioned, when something does happen, it can be absolutely a horrific story. So,
and I'm going to correct you. Actually, we've only been together 3 years, and we've already got our will in place. So it wasn't on the list of things to do for that long. However, I had a will in place, but then I got divorced. So I wanted to protect us and Charlott with that because of that divorce process. So that was one of the reasons why I was quite keen to do it. And also, we were about to climb Everest, so there was a little bit of a worry that that one of us might not come back.
This is quite an important part, which I'm going to want Derek to sort of share with us. So when you get divorced, when circumstances change, if you get married, and so I had a will before on my own, and then we got together and want to protect that, but automatically we were getting married, and you can't then kind of assume that the will is going to change. So talk a little bit about how the services work, and both obviously if you're single going into marriage, how that kind of affects the paper documents that you might already have in place.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, and what some people don't sometimes understand, is that when you get married, even if you've got a will previously, unless you've included a clause in there that says, you know, I expect to marry my partner X and I would like the will to survive the marriage, once you get married, the previous wills are null and void. So even if you had a will in place, once you get married, it doesn't count. It carries no weight. So it's very important when, I mean, marriage, but any other significant life event, you know, marriage, death, divorce, inheritance, kids, all those, you know, all those key things in life, then when that happens, it's important to think about, well, do I, you know, it might prompt me to get my will in place, but even if you've got a will, whether that changes anything and whether you need to review your will to figure out whether it still does what you want it to do.
And so the next question is, right, it's about the process, right? So take us through the journey, right? So let's just pretend that we've just met you, mate. We've realized that we like you. We want to do business with you. We want you to sort out our will. We've already established that it's going to cost a lot less than if I went to a solicitor. So I'm all in, right? I'm in. What's the process? So take us through that stage by stage.
Yeah, lovely. So, I mean, what we normally do is we'll start off with a phone call, right? And we'll arrange that at a convenient time. It's normally a five-minute conversation where we're clarifying a few minor details. And then I explain what we'll do is effectively we'll confirm. The most important thing is we'll confirm the appointment. Right, let's get that in the diary, whether that's during the day, whether that's face to face, whether that's in the evening over Zoom or whatever. I'll try and be as flexible as I can to work around people, because I understand, especially at the moment, school holidays, kids in the house, you know, shift working, all sorts of different things, right? It's not always easy to get it in during the day, so we can work around that. Then when you've got that appointment in place, I'd send an email to confirm that time and date. I then send you quite an important document. It's just an information document that it's important for you to flick through over a cup of tea or a glass of wine, however you're inclined, just to get your mind thinking about some of the key components of your will. So as a couple, for example, like yourselves, you would have already maybe discussed executorship and any distribution of the estate and all that kind of stuff, you know. So it's important that sometimes you have that conversation in advance so we can have as constructive use of our first appointment as possible. Otherwise, we get to the scenario where, have you thought about who you want as executors? No. Right. Okay. So it's a longer appointment. So it helps if you've maybe considered some of these key things. But one of the other things I do when we start the appointment is that before I know anything about people's circumstances, I explain, look, give me 10 minutes and I'll talk you through what's available and how things work. Because everyone, as you've said there, everyone gets to the point where they think, right, I need to get my will. And you may well do, but there may well be other things that you weren't aware of and might want to consider. And even if it's not right for you now, in the fullness of time, it will be appropriate. And it certainly might prompt conversations with older family members that may not have. So things like lasting power of attorney, potentially the use of trusts and stuff like that. So often the will is the starting point, and that might be all everybody needs at that point. But also, I'm often sharing information with people that will be appropriate at some point.
I just want to come back because you mentioned a key word there when you said the estate. And this is actually one of the myths that I've heard, believe it or not, I've genuinely heard this, that people have said, oh, I don't really need a will. It's only rich people that have wills. And I've genuinely heard that. And I was a bit like, what? Like, and I think it's because of the terminology, the estate. And when people think of their estate, they're thinking of something bigger and larger. But yet, actually, it's not their estate, it's their assets. I mean, you can still have assets living in rented accommodation or even in a council house. You can still have valuable asset that will literally just go to, have to then go into probate. So it really is defining, what an asset is. I mean, I know someone who's got a motorbike that's worth £200,000 plus. That's an asset. If he was just living home with his mum and dad, that would still be a valuable asset.
And sometimes we should simplify it. Maybe we shouldn't mention estate. We should say your stuff, because that's what it means. It's all your stuff, right? Whether it's a home that you own, a motorbike, a car, a boat, some war medals, anything really. It's your stuff.
And I think it's just a really important thing to say, because some of them are just family heirlooms. Well, where does that family heirloom go? And sometimes their stuff isn't even that valuable, but as sentimentality, it could be priceless. And I think that's something else that's quite important. So let's just say, right, so we've sat down now. We've had our first conversation with you. All right. Charlotte and I don't have children, as everyone knows. So our executors are family members. And then we thought about, right, okay, so our first level of executors was our parents, right? So, if something happens to both of us, it's our parents that will look after everything. But then if something happens to them, what happens then? So it's different layers of executors as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could, it's always good practice to have at least two executors, right? Whether it's one primary and one replacement. But you can have up to four. You just need to think about how practical it might be for them all to work together. So often people will say, right, I want my partner as my primary executor. And if for some reason they're not around or they can't act, then I might want, let's have my brother and your sister as the replacement executors, for example. So there's the chances are there's going to be someone around that could administer the estate.
And something else that we've put in, which I also want to mention, is our dog. So our dog is in our will, and the reason being is if something happens to us, we don't want our dog to go to a dog home. We want her to be looked after. She's part of the family, and a lot of people forget about this. So, and it's quite an important thing, isn't it, to think about the family as a whole?
Well, absolutely. I mean, because your dog in your circumstances is part of your family, so you want to make sure that if you weren't around, then the dog is looked after as if you were still around. So often people might well say, right, if we're not around, I want my dog to go to my friend or somewhere specific. And they may even attach a monetary gift or something that goes with that to say, right, to make sure that you're able to look after my dog, then I would also, gift X amount, for example, to go with it. And it could be conditional.
We were restricted with our dog. It comes with conditions because there's only about 4 people in the world that can actually get anywhere near her. Okay.
I think it's a massive myth that people think that if you, even if you haven't got a will and you have children, that you mentioned this, which is something else I want to talk about, that it automatically goes to the children and it automatically goes to whoever is your family member, because it doesn't. And just take us through a few sort of shocking examples of what can happen if you haven't got your will in place, and that myth that people sort of assume.
Yeah, well, I mean, as Jamie mentioned earlier, to be honest, I mean, if you've got kids, and certainly kids that are under 18, one of the most important reasons to get a will is so that you can appoint guardians that could raise your kids if you weren't around. And that's probably the most important thing, because you don't want to play around with that. You don't even want your kids to go into the care system for 24 hours, let alone days or weeks, while the courts and social services figure out where they should best placed. So why would you want your child to ever have to go through that kind of scenario? So it's important to do that. But also, it's, if you haven't got a will, then the laws of intestacy will apply to your stuff, right? And those laws were drawn up almost 100 years ago, where cultural norms are a bit different. So some people have seen the laws of intestacy, how it works, and figured out, well, if I don't get a will in place, I know where my stuff's going, and I'm not happy with that. And they'll get a will in place specifically because of that. And sometimes it can be quite wealthy people. And they've decided, right, no, I'm not happy with that scenario, because I know, for example, it might go to my parent, to my dad, or it might go to my sister, and I'm going, no, I don't want that to happen. So, if you're ever not sure, have a look at what the laws of intestacy will say, and figure out, oh, okay, well, it might go to where I want it, but the chance that it probably won't. And the most important thing is you're not really in control then. That means everything goes that way. And whereas the will is an opportunity for you to think about, okay, that's the majority of my stuff. But for example, family heirlooms, I want my specific things to go there. I might want my motorbike to go to my friend or somewhere like that. So it's being able to make specific gifts and maybe divvy up your stuff in a different way. Whereas otherwise it might just go all in that direction. And that's not what people want.
That's a really
absolutely.
important message there, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit now about, let's go upper tier. All right. So we're talking about the people that have got some stuff, maybe one property, a terraced house or a boat or a shed. Let's go to the people that have now got multiple properties. And now they have effectively an asset portfolio, a portfolio of stuff that's got some serious value. Now, anything over, and if I'm correct, you may need to correct me on this, anything over a value of £1 million, you are then in the realms of inheritance tax. Am I right in those figures?
It depends on your circumstances, to be honest. So if you meet three conditions, in other words, if you're married, you own your own home, and you leave your home to your lineal descendants, in other words, your children or grandchildren, then if you meet those three criteria, then you would have between you £1 million inheritance tax allowance. But if you don't own your own home or you don't have children, that doesn't apply. So in other words, it might be 650,000 between a married couple with no children. If you're unmarried, it's less than that. So it very much depends on your family circumstances. But there is the maximum that you can effectively have is £1 million inheritance tax allowance if you met those three.
Right. So let's just say now we've got 7 houses. We own a big estate. We own, our assets are worth, 1.2 million, right? But I don't want the government to have that because they haven't worked hard for it. And let's be honest, I've worked so hard my whole life paying my taxes that I don't want to have anything else. So how do I protect that?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, depending on your circumstances, and it's always difficult to almost throw some suggestions out there, but because they're all very specific and they're tailored to people's circumstances. But there are different estate planning strategies you can adopt that would suit exactly where you are. So, for example, if and as often the case these days is that the family home is probably the most valuable asset. And you can quite easily, if someone had a £1 million estate, £1 million of that might well be your family home. These days, if you've got a decent home and it goes up in value and the mortgage is paid off, it's a huge amount of equity. Now, there are things like you could gift, a portion of the home, provided very specific conditions are met, that then after 7 years, that portion of the home would fall out of your estate from an inheritance tax perspective. So in that scenario, if the family home was worth a huge amount, that might be one way you could do it, provided you live for a further 7 years. With the scenario of potentially a buy-to-let property portfolio, it's a bit different. That sort of doesn't really work. And certainly with a larger portfolio, we have a product called professional landlord planning solution that often is very it's of real interest to those with a fairly attractive property portfolio. And I won't go into all the details now, but at the end of the day, it's a 3-year process. If you start with the properties in your own name, which historically was the most tax efficient way of doing it, that's changed fairly recently. But if they started there after 3 years, then the properties would be in a limited company. You'd avoided paying stamp duty and capital gains on the way in. And then you just pay corporation tax on the profits. And then at the end of the 3-year process, the value of the estate would also be outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes. So it's a very powerful way of doing it. Obviously, it's a fairly expensive tax planning strategy. But when you're thinking about lots of money and potentially several £1 million worth of buy-to-let property, it's probably one of the few ways that you can mitigate inheritance tax. Otherwise, your beneficiaries will still do very well when you pass, because you'll still have a very affluent estate. But one of the first things they'll have to settle is a huge inheritance tax bill. And if the majority of your wealth is tied up in property where you've got long-term tenants, it's very difficult to realize any liquid assets to pay the inheritance tax bill when your properties are full and you can't sell them, etc., etc. So in that scenario, yeah, we've got a fairly bespoke product that would be of interest for people.
That's something so important to think about,
Yeah.
isn't it? If you have that kind of, because like you said, it can be people living in the houses, you can't sell them straight away, and how are you going to pay that massive bill?
That's it. Yeah, because I mean, effectively, the house could, you're looking to protect your property, your relatives, and also your tenants, right? Because a property could literally almost go through repossession before anything's actually done, especially if the estate gets frozen. Now, look, I do want to make a very clear point here, right? We have not prepped you with the questions that we've given you today, that we've presented you with. Okay, this is knowledge that you have. And the reason why I've said it is because I think it's quite prudent to note that you are a knowledgeable guy when it comes to this subject. You know your stuff. And I think that really, for us anyway, it's a testament of how people can trust you, because you know the scenarios. You've worked all of these little scenarios. How long have you been doing this for now, Derry? I mean, what is your experience background?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've only been doing this for the last 3.5 years. I spent 20 odd years in the corporate world where I was a company director that delivered, sort of government contracts, social interventions, employability skills, justice services, things like that. And I took redundancy. And for the first time in my career, I had a bit of time to think about what I wanted to do. And I just came across, will writing and estate planning. And the more I thought about it, I just thought I'd really enjoy learning something new, but also I'm a bit of a people person. I thought I'd really enjoy doing that. And I'll be honest, had I not taken redundancy, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. But let's be, more and more of us are going to probably go through that kind of scenario. I mean, you've mentioned a few different jobs that you've had, so people probably aren't going to do the same job forever now, are they? So it's how you go with that. And I've never taken a step back. I've really enjoyed where I am, and it's continuous, development, and it's training and it's learning. And you to some extent you should never stop learning. But back to the price at the start, I think the value is in the conversations you have. Sure,
Yeah.
Anybody can go and buy a £20 will kit on the internet and stuff, but the value is in the rich conversation around, well, what about if that happens then? What about other family members? What about the third level of what do you want to happen in a disaster scenario? That's where the real value comes from. So you get a very bespoke will, because otherwise you're just going to get a fairly generic thing that you might think does what you think it did, but it probably doesn't in reality.
No, I think that's very confusing.
I've had one of those wills. and do you know what? I can honestly say, I think it cost me like $19.99 or something from Marks and Spencer's, but it really was not worth the paper it was written on. The folder it came in was probably had more value because it didn't really. You just kind of sign. You say, "I'll give everything to so and so," and then you just sign it. But it doesn't go into the ins and outs of all of the more sentimental stuff. I got one last question I want to talk to you about, because I realised that we've gone on for a little bit longer than I think we're both planning. But we were talking about children earlier, and I want to talk about another stage of life, which is when we lose our ability to make cognitive decisions, or we end up in care. And this is when having the right things in place at the right time is really, really important. Now, I'm also, when I want to bring in another scenario with this, is literally 8 years ago, I woke up paralyzed from the waist down. And this could have happened. I could have been paralyzed from the neck down. It could, and yeah, granted, it was very rare, but it's actually not as rare as you think. People end up in situations after a car accident, an illness, a virus, old age. And it is important that you have the bases covered on this. So I just want you to talk to me a little bit about power of attorney and how we can protect ourselves from these dramatic decisions.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Jamie, which is why I often try and explain of all the different things that are available, such as power of attorney, because often people, it just won't be on their radar. My father's one of the cleverest people I've ever known. And when I talked him through it a few years ago, he didn't even know it existed. He didn't know you could do that and didn't know the implications. So, if someone loses mental faculty, either through an accident or through degenerative illness such as dementia, then what people don't seem to understand is that once the medical practitioners have made the diagnosis, they have to inform the Office of Public Guardian within 14 days. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what they do with the best of intentions is they will step in and freeze all your stuff. And the reason they do that is because they've been told by the doctors that you can't make decisions for yourself anymore. So they'll step in to make sure that no one can take advantage and can take your stuff. Even joint accounts would be frozen. And the only recourse for the family, if they haven't got power of attorney in place, is to go to for what's called deputyship in the Court of Protection, which is a very expensive process. It takes months and months. It's a really emotional, draining exercise. And if you want to make a decision, you need to go back to court. So it's quite a simple document to get in place. And it tends to be associated with older people because people start thinking about that and their other half at that point. But actually, it's quite important to just get in place, really. Because, as you've said, anything can happen at any point. And it's a very difficult scenario when someone has lost capacity. I mean, we've seen it on TV presenters fairly recently. And it was quite documented, the kind of pain that she went through to try and rectify the situation and stuff. So it can happen all too often and it can be avoided. As I keep saying, it's never too early, but it can be too late. So
yeah, it's a really good point.
Really valuable point. Yes.
So I have got one other question for you. Sorry, Derry. Right. So we've got our will in place. We've got our power of attorney in place. Okay. We've got all of this stuff happened. Everything's now, we are good to go. And we have a small life change that we need to now account for. Do we have to have a brand new will, or can we just amend the will that we have?
Yeah, once I've written your initial will, then quite often, if someone needs to tweak the will or make a change, I'll only charge effectively what it takes for me to produce the new document. So you're not starting from scratch because, as you've said there, the majority of it might be exactly as it was before. You might have just want to add another gift or something's changed and you want to change a beneficiary. So it actually, in fairness, it's fairly simplistic to do. And I would only charge maybe 50 quid to produce the document and to get it over with you. So, and once people have got their will in place, from the stats I've read, is that people are likely to change their will 3 times because things will happen as you get older. Circumstances will change, family circumstances will change, and you'll probably want to revise your will. I mean, I've got a few people who they seem to change their will almost on a semi-regular basis, to be honest. But yeah, people one will probably won't necessarily work forever. It might do, and that's great if it does. But as things change, you may need to consider whether your will is reflective of your wishes.
It's a great way to know that you can actually just come back to you and not having to start all over again.
So listen, Derry, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. I always love doing shows with you because I genuinely actually find the subject incredibly interesting. Who knows, right? I don't know why, but I just do. So ladies and gentlemen, look, I want to say a massive thank you to Derry Appal. And I want to say these final words. Go and see Derry, have a chat with him, because trust me, with Derry's help, the future can be written. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Derry, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. It's been a real education. And I think we've got another show to come all about what you do when you run a business and how do you work at that. So I'm really looking forward to another show with Derry where we'll talk all about that subject. Derry, take care. Have a fantastic
Always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Welcome to Blue Koala Office Solutions. We are here to help you grow with competitive rates and reliable sources, allowing you to expand and develop in an efficient way. Why do you need a virtual office address? Perhaps you're working from home, but you don't want to use your home address. You may be an expanding business and are looking to attract businesses in Newport and/or Cardiff. Are you looking for an address you can register with Google and SEO? We offer flexible short-term agreements, super high-speed fibre, 24-hour access and security, meeting room for up to 6 people. We are located in Whitchurch, Cardiff, with easy access from M4 and A470, and as well as the meeting room, we also have a podcast studio and a film studio that you can rent on an hourly basis. We have created a cozy hidden gem where businesses can come together to brainstorm, as well as having a professional environment. So if you would like to find out more, get in touch. info@bluekoalaofficesolutions.com.